Wait. Stop scrolling. Because what I'm about to tell you will make you question everything you know about wealth, about power, about what happens when you discover someone's deepest secret. She is 26 years old. She just lost her job. She is desperate. She needs money urgently to pay for her mother's medical bills. And then she sees it. Personal assistant needed. Live-in position. Billionaire's mansion. 6 figures annually. She applies. She gets the interview. She meets the owner, a man in his late 30s. He is one of the richest men in the country. He is powerful, successful, untouchable. He hires her on the spot. She moves into the mansion that night. The first week is perfect. Her own suite. Full access to everything. Her job is simple. Manage schedules, handle correspondence, coordinate household staff. But something is wrong. Something doesn't add up. He disappears every night at midnight. He locks himself in the West Wing. He tells her never to go there. She doesn't ask questions. She needs this job. She needs the money. But she's curious. She's intelligent. She notices things. And one night, her curiosity gets the better of her. She follows him. She opens the door to the West Wing. She walks in on him at midnight. And what she discovers will change everything. Because he has a secret. A secret so profound, so unexpected, so shocking that it will redefine who she thought he was. This is a story about truth. About what we hide from the world. About what happens when someone finally sees you. If you've ever wondered what the wealthy are hiding behind closed doors, if you've ever wondered what happens when everyone goes home, if you've ever wondered what it's like to carry a secret alone, this story is for you. Rate this from 0 to 10. Tell me if she was right to invade his privacy. Tell me if he had the right to keep secrets. Tell me if discovering someone's truth brings you closer or pushes you apart. But most importantly, if you discovered someone's deepest secret, would you use it against them? Or would you help them carry it? Let's find out what happens at midnight. She lost her job on a Tuesday morning. She worked as a project manager for a marketing firm. She was good at what she did. She had been there for 3 years. Then the company downsized. Her position was eliminated. 2 weeks' notice and severance that amounted to almost nothing. She went home and cried. Because there were bills to pay. Because rent was due in 2 weeks. Because her mother's medical bills were increasing and she was the only one who could help. Her mother had been diagnosed with a rare degenerative disease 2 years ago. The treatment was expensive. Insurance didn't cover it. She had been paying month after month, pulling from her savings. And now she had no job, no income, no way forward. She sat at her computer and searched for anything that paid well and hired fast. Then she saw it. Personal assistant needed. Live-in position. Billionaire's mansion. $100,000 per year. She nearly fell out of her chair. $100,000 per year. More than she had ever made. Enough to change everything. She applied immediately. The next day, interview scheduled. One of the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city. She showed up early. Nervous. The mansion was the kind of place she had only seen in movies. Surrounded by walls and gates and security. A guard let her through. She walked up the drive. She rang the doorbell. And then he answered. Taller than expected. More handsome than expected. Younger than expected. Late 30s, not 70. He introduced himself. She introduced herself in return. He led her through the mansion. Pristine. Expensive art. Furniture that cost more than her apartment. Money visible everywhere. He showed her around. Explained the job. He needed someone intelligent and trustworthy and discreet. She asked. Discreet about what? He hesitated. I value my privacy. I need someone who respects that. She nodded. She wasn't going to ask questions. At the end of the interview, he said, I'd like to offer you the position. You can start today if you're willing. Her heart jumped. Yes. Absolutely yes. He said, You'll have your own suite. Full access to the household. But there is one area that is off limits. The West Wing. I use that space for personal reasons. You must never go there. Do you understand? She said. I understand. But she didn't understand. She was curious. She wanted to know what he was hiding. But she kept her mouth shut. She needed this job too much to risk it. She moved in that day. Her suite was larger than her entire apartment used to be. King-size bed. Heated floors in the bathroom. A closet with more space than she knew what to do with. She unpacked her few belongings and felt like an imposter in this world of extreme wealth. The first week was uneventful. She learned the household routines. She met the staff, chef, housekeeper, gardener, security team. She learned that living in a mansion meant being surrounded by people but also being completely alone. He was formal with her. Professional. He kept boundaries between them. She did her job well. She managed his schedule. She handled his correspondence. She coordinated with the household staff. She was efficient and discreet. But she noticed things. She noticed he disappeared every night at exactly midnight. She noticed he would go to his private office and close the door. She noticed he would be gone for hours. She noticed his office was off limits. Just like the West Wing. She noticed he locked the doors carefully. She noticed he didn't want anyone to know what he was doing. She was curious. She wanted to know what he was hiding. The second week, she tried to follow him. She watched as he walked down the hallway at midnight. She saw him enter his office. She saw him lock the door. She stood outside and listened. She heard music. Classical music playing inside. Nothing else. She went back to her room and wondered. The third week, he asked her to stay late to help with correspondence. She stayed in his office with him until 11:45 p.m. She watched as he became increasingly anxious as the time approached midnight. Finally, he said, "That's enough for tonight. You can go to your room." She understood. He was dismissing her. She went to her room. But she waited. She waited until she heard him pass by her door. She waited until she heard him enter his office. And then she did something she knew she shouldn't do. She got out of bed. She walked down the hallway. She approached the office door. And she saw something that made her stop. The door to the West Wing was open. She stood in the hallway, staring at the open door. The door had never been open before. Always locked. Off limits. But tonight it was open. Her heart was pounding. She knew she shouldn't go in there. She knew this was crossing a line. But she was too curious to resist. She walked through the open door. The West Wing was unlike any other part of the mansion. It had been transformed into something that didn't fit. It was a music studio. Instruments everywhere. Expensive violins mounted on the wall. A piano that looked like it cost more than her entire life savings. Recording equipment. Mixing boards. Speakers. And standing in the center of the room with his eyes closed, playing the violin, was him. She froze. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. Because he was crying. He was playing the violin and crying at the same time. His entire body was shaking with emotion. He was pouring his soul into the music. She had never heard anything so beautiful. She had never witnessed anything so vulnerable. She had never seen someone so completely lost in emotion. She didn't know how long she stood there. She didn't know how long she watched. She didn't know how long she listened. But eventually, he stopped playing. He opened his eyes. He saw her standing in the doorway. And for a moment, neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them breathed. Then he said, very quietly, "How long have you been standing there?" She couldn't lie. "I don't know. A few minutes, maybe." He set down his violin carefully. His hands were shaking. His face showed a complex mix of emotions. Shame, embarrassment, anger, sadness. He said, "You weren't supposed to come in here." She said, "I know. I'm sorry." He said, "Why did you come in here?" She said, "I heard music. I wanted to know what you were doing." He turned away. He walked to the window and stared out at the night sky. His shoulders were hunched. He looked small and vulnerable, nothing like the powerful billionaire she had met in the interview. He said, "You want to know what I do every night at midnight? You want to know what the big secret is?" She didn't say anything. She waited. He said, "I'm a musician. Or at least I used to be. Before I built my company. Before I became wealthy. I was a violinist. I was going to perform professionally. I was going to dedicate my life to music." He paused. His voice became quieter. He continued, "But my father got sick. My mother needed money for his treatment. I gave up music to build a business. I built a company so I could make enough money to pay for his treatment. And I succeeded. My father lived another 10 years. And then he died anyway." He turned to face her. He said, "So now I have all this money. I have everything I could possibly want. But I don't have the one thing I actually wanted. I don't have music. I don't have the person I was before I had to sacrifice everything." His voice cracked. He looked away. He said, "Every night at midnight, I come here and I try to remember who I was. I try to remember what it felt like to play for the love of music, not for anyone else. I try to remember before everything changed." She felt tears in her own eyes. She understood something in that moment. They weren't so different. She had sacrificed her own life for her mother. He had sacrificed his own life for his parents. She said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have invaded your privacy." He said, "No, you shouldn't have. But now you know. Now you know my secret." After that night, everything changed. She didn't pretend anymore. She didn't pretend she didn't know about the West Wing. She didn't pretend he was just a billionaire with a normal life. And he didn't hide anymore. He began to share his music with her. He began to play for her. He began to let her see the part of himself that he had hidden from the world. She started spending her midnight hours in the West Wing with him. She listened as he played. She learned the story of each piece, what it meant, why he had chosen it, what it represented. One night, he said, "I used to perform with an orchestra. Before everything changed. I was supposed to have a solo concert. It was going to be my debut. And then I had to give it all up." She asked, "Do you regret it?" He was quiet for a long time. "I did. For a long time, I regretted giving up music more than anything. But then I realized something. Giving up music taught me something that music alone never could have taught me. It taught me about sacrifice. It taught me about what really matters. It taught me that some things are more important than your own dreams." She said, "You could still perform. You could still do music professionally." He said, "Maybe. But then I wouldn't have time for everything else. I would have to choose again. And I'm not sure I'm ready to give up what I have now." She understood. She understood that sometimes you don't get to have everything. Sometimes you have to choose. 2 months after discovering the secret, she was still working for him. 2 months of midnight visits to the West Wing. 2 months of listening to him play. 2 months of understanding him in a way that nobody else in the world understood him. During those 2 months, she had been offered other jobs. Recruiter had called her. Companies had approached her. She had been offered positions that paid more, that didn't require her to live in someone else's mansion, that offered traditional career paths and advancement opportunities. One company had offered her a position as a project manager. The exact role she had lost. The salary was even better than her previous job. The benefits were excellent. It was, on paper, the perfect opportunity to move forward with her life. She had seriously considered it. She had sat in the West Wing one night, listening to him play, and she had thought about accepting the offer. She had thought about what it would mean to leave. She had thought about going back to the life she had before. But then she had realized something. Going back to the life she had before wasn't actually moving forward. Going back to a job she had only taken because she needed money wasn't actually progress. Going back to a life where she was just surviving, not living, wasn't actually an upgrade. So she had turned down the offer. And she had stayed. She stayed because she had found something more valuable than just a job. She had found meaning. Real meaning. Not the kind of meaning that comes from a title or a salary or professional accomplishments. She had found connection. Real connection. The kind of connection that only happens when two people have seen each other completely and chosen to stay anyway. She had found someone who understood what it meant to sacrifice yourself for someone else. Someone who got it. Someone who didn't judge her for the resentment she had carried. Someone who understood that sometimes love and resentment live in the same heart at the same time. One night, they sat in the West Wing. The lights were dim. He had just finished playing a piece, a Brahms concerto that he said had been his audition piece for the orchestra years ago, in the life he had abandoned. The music had faded into silence. The kind of silence that only exists after beautiful music has stopped. A silence that is full of the echo of what was just played. She turned to him. She said, "I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone." He stopped putting his violin away. He turned to her completely. He listened. Not the kind of listening where you're just waiting for your turn to talk, but real listening. The kind where someone gives you their complete attention and their presence. She said, "I sacrificed my career for my mother. I stayed in a job I hated because I needed the steady income to pay for her medical bills. I turned down promotions because I couldn't risk the instability. I said no to opportunities because I was terrified of losing the income one needed." She paused. She gathered her courage. She continued. "And I resented her for it. I resented her for being sick. I resented her for needing help. I resented her for making me give up my dreams. I carried that resentment every single day for 2 years. I blamed her for the fact that I was stuck. I blamed her for the fact that I couldn't move forward with my life." She looked at him. She saw compassion in his expression. No judgment. Just understanding. She said, "But recently I realized something that changed everything. She never asked me to sacrifice anything. She never told me to stay in that job. She never told me to give up my dreams. I made that choice myself." She felt tears coming, but she continued. She said, "I was 18 when she got sick. I was just starting my career. I had options. I had possibilities. I could have gone to grad school. I could have taken risks. I could have changed jobs to advance my career. But I didn't. I chose safety. I chose security. I chose to stay in a job that was killing me slowly because I was terrified of not being able to pay for her treatment." She paused. The realization was becoming clearer as she spoke it aloud. She continued, "And I think I've been angry at her for something that was actually my own decision. I've been blaming her for the fact that I was stuck, when really I was the one who chose to stay stuck. I was the one who prioritized her survival over my own growth. And that was my choice. That was my responsibility. And I've been punishing her for it." She looked at him directly. She said, "I think I need to have a conversation with her. I think I need to tell her the truth, that I resented her, that I blamed her, that I was angry at her. And I think I need to apologize for blaming her for my own choices." He set down his violin completely. He moved closer to her. He said, "What are you going to do?" She said, "I'm going to call her tomorrow. I'm going to tell her everything. I'm going to tell her that I resented her. I'm going to tell her that I was angry at her. I'm going to tell her that I blamed her for the fact that I gave up my dreams. And then I'm going to tell her that I understand now that it was my choice, and I'm sorry for punishing her for it." He said, "That takes courage. That takes a kind of vulnerability that most people never risk." She said, "So does what you're doing. So does coming to terms with the person you are versus the person you thought you were going to be. So does admitting that you gave up your dreams and then learning to be okay with that. That takes courage too." They sat in silence for a while. Not an uncomfortable silence. A silence that felt full of understanding. Finally, he said, "I'm glad you walked in on me at midnight. I'm glad you discovered my secret. Because keeping that secret was killing me. Slowly, every single day, it was killing me. I was living a lie. I was pretending to be someone I wasn't. I was being successful in the world's eyes but feeling completely empty inside." He paused. He looked directly at her. He continued, "And now that someone knows the truth, now that someone has seen me in my most vulnerable moment and chosen to stay anyway, it doesn't feel like such a burden anymore. The secret doesn't feel like it's crushing me. The part of myself that I had to hide, it doesn't feel like it has to stay hidden anymore." He said, "You gave me permission to be myself. You gave me permission to integrate the part of myself that I had compartmentalized away. You gave me permission to stop pretending." She said, "Your secret is safe with me. You know that, right? This will never leave this room. This will never be used against you. This will never become gossip or leverage or a weapon. Your secret is safe." He said, "I know. That's why I told you. That's why I let you see me like this. Because I could tell from the moment I saw you that you were the kind of person who could hold someone else's truth without judgment. You were the kind of person who could see someone completely and still choose to care about them. So here's what I want you to understand about this story, and I need you to really hear this because this is the most important part. They were both living with secrets. They were both carrying the weight of sacrifice. They were both pretending to be people they weren't. They were both living in compartments. One part of themselves visible to the world, another part hidden, locked away, protected from judgment. But when she discovered the truth, when she walked in on him at midnight, something shifted. He was forced to stop pretending. He was forced to confront the truth about who he was and who he had become. He was forced to face the reality that the person he had built was not the person he had wanted to be. And that truth, uncomfortable as it was, painful as it was, set him free. That truth allowed him to integrate the two parts of himself that he had kept separate for so long. That truth allowed him to stop living in compartments and start living as a whole person. This is the power of being known. This is the power of someone seeing you, really seeing you, and not judging you for what they find. This is the power of vulnerability meeting acceptance. Now, there's something else I want you to understand. This story isn't just about him. It's about her too. She came to work for him as someone who was drowning. She came to work for him as someone who had sacrificed herself and then blamed someone else for that sacrifice. She came to work for him as someone who was carrying resentment that was poisoning her from the inside. But by witnessing his truth, by seeing him break down those walls, by watching him integrate his hidden self back into his life, she learned something about herself. She learned that the person who had sacrificed wasn't her mother. It was her. She learned that she had made the choice. She learned that she had agency. She learned that blaming her mother for the consequences of her own choices was a way of avoiding responsibility for her own life. And in that realization, she found something powerful. She found the ability to forgive. Not just her mother, but herself. She found the ability to take back ownership of her own decisions and her own life. So here's what I want you to understand: if you are carrying a secret, if you are hiding a part of yourself, if you are pretending to be someone you're not, that secret is probably hurting you more than it's protecting you. That hidden part of yourself is probably creating more pain than it's preventing. The energy it takes to maintain a facade, the effort it requires to keep part of yourself locked away, the pain of never being fully known, it's all costing you something. And what it's costing you is the possibility of real connection. What it's costing you is the possibility of being loved for who you actually are. What it's costing you is the possibility of living as a whole person instead of a fractured one. The secret doesn't protect you. It isolates you. The facade doesn't keep you safe. It keeps you alone. And if you are the person who discovers someone's secret, if you are the person who walks in on someone in their most vulnerable moment, understand this. You have a choice. You have power in that moment. You can use that knowledge against them. You can weaponize their vulnerability. You can use their secret to manipulate them or control them or hurt them. Or you can do what she did. You can hold that secret with care. You can offer acceptance instead of judgment. You can help them integrate that part of themselves back into their life. You can be the person who says, "I see who you really are, and I choose to care about you anyway." She chose the second path. And in doing so, she became someone he could trust completely. She became someone that mattered to him in a way that nobody else in his life mattered. She became the person who knew his truth and loved him anyway. And that's what real connection looks like. Not the connection that comes from perfect presentations and carefully maintained facades. Not the connection that comes from shared accomplishments or mutual benefit. But the connection that comes from seeing someone completely. The good, the bad, the weak, the scared, the vulnerable, the broken, the human, and choosing to love them anyway. That's the connection worth staying for. That's the connection worth sacrificing for. That's the connection that actually matters. And here's the final thing I want you to understand. She had choices. She had job offers. She had opportunities to move on. She had the ability to leave that mansion and go back to a more traditional life. But she stayed. She stayed not because she was trapped. She stayed not because she had no other options. She stayed because she had found something more valuable than financial security or career advancement or any of the things the world tells us we should want. She stayed because she had found meaning. Real meaning. The kind that comes from being needed, from being known, from mattering to someone. And that's the choice we all face. Do we pursue what the world tells us we should want? Or do we pursue what our hearts tell us actually matters? She chose her heart. And in doing so, she found something that money and career advancement could never give her. She found connection. Real connection. The kind that changes who you are and how you see yourself. That's what's possible when you prioritize connection over achievement. That's what's possible when you choose to be fully known over being carefully presented. That's what's possible when you have the courage to see someone completely and love them anyway. I'll see you next time.